Oh, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss at Internet Shitlords. And that's my cat. And I'm coming to you today to tell you a little bit about a trip I took last year. I went to Seattle. This is a true story. I was in Seattle. And I could go there again. Wizards of the Coast and other Seattleites. Seattle SJWs, I walked among you. And you never know when the pundit's going to be there. I was invited to be there. I'm not going to tell you who or in what relation to what, but the main thing, the really important thing here, is that when I was there, you know, I got certain impressions of Seattle, and that gave me certain a certain amount of education, you could say. What I found, first of all, the traffic was awful, right? I think everybody can agree that. Left, right, everybody, I hope, who has ever been to Seattle will agree that the traffic is a mess there. But beyond that, I think that when I was there, I heard words and languages utterly foreign to me. And I could smell dishes both delectable and strange. It was a city of ultimate delights, and alien things eventually became familiar to me, and strangers became my friends. And there was fashion and comportment and love and practiced with an art and zest that in this city that was uncommon elsewhere. You could visit the festivals and see for yourself. And don't miss the cross-dressing performers who regale audiences with humor and song. Fabulous. That word doesn't even begin to describe it. The city was also a haven for anyone who defines for themselves what it means to be a man or a woman, for those who transcend gender as the gods do, and those who redefine entirely who they are. What confidence! I never tired of witnessing it. I have seen folk in Seattle whose lives are more magical than any marvels possible with spells. Okay, so actually with Seattle I mostly found a lot of white SJW liberal douchebags, though there was some very nice people there in some places. I talked to some very nice people who were interested in talking to me. I also ran into some really good places. There was a great Thai restaurant there. There's some great Chinese people who I always get along well with because of my background, studies and things like that. And it was a fun trip, right? But what I was quoting wasn't really my own experience. What I was quoting is actually what supposedly Waterdeep is like today in the Forgotten Realms. Because that's where we're at now. Where this is Fantasy Seattle. Waterdeep is basically Fantasy Seattle. It's just Seattle. It's really just Seattle, exactly as it is. With people who are able to cast Fireball, but never will, because that would probably be culturally appropriative or offensive or something like that, right? I was quoting from chapter 9 of the new Waterdeep book, and this kind of sums up, the situation I already talked about in an earlier video, right? Like, this is the agenda of how we have to do fantasy now. It can't be myth. It can't be epic. It can't be heroic. It can't be good versus evil. Fantasy is just a way to engage in a kind of propagandistic indoctrination of identity politics, left cultural values of the Seattle, Portland, San Francisco triangle. Right? These are the people that think that they deserve to run everybody's life. We know that from what Google and YouTube and Twitter do, and they think that they get to run everybody's campaign. And now here's the problem, right? This is how every setting is supposed to be now. It's what it should look like, right? When I came out with Lion and Dragon, I'm really glad that I didn't put Lion and Dragon behind my cat, because otherwise I can't show it off here. Here's Lion and Dragon. You see, that's Lion and Dragon, medieval authentic role playing. My cat is also very interested in Lion and Dragon. She's a huge fan. I got criticism because it's a game that is an authentic recreation of medieval culture, medieval society, right? To a certain extent. I actually cheat. I'm actually a liberal softie, and what I said was that really, first of all, and this applies everywhere. I'm going to say it to everybody, that if you're the DM is in charge, not the game designer, not the writer, not goddamn Jeremy Crawford writing about how you have to have, transvestite festivals in Waterdeep, right? The DM is in charge. And the DM can make his setting anything he wants. If you want to get Lion and Dragon and use it to run a game in, a nation where everybody is culturally diverse and there's, it's 1456, but everyone's totally accepting of your gay lifestyle, then you go right ahead. You can do it because it's your game, right? So that's the first thing I said. And then the second thing I said, to even show how much more of a softie I am, I point out, well, it isn't hard to adapt slightly to allow for example, gender roles, because that is a big problem. If you have a person wanting to play a female character, you want a woman who's playing that character, or whoever who's playing a female character, to be able to have something to do, right? Because otherwise you're going to just have to say, well, you can only play men, right? So I pointed out a few things, right? Saints, were not gender limited, so there's no reason that if you had clerics who receive miracles from God, it sure seems like it would be within reason to assume that a monotheistic God, even the Christian monotheistic God, if he selects people to be miraculous paladins for fighting for the faith against heretics and witches and demons and evil creatures of darkness, people with miraculous powers of great faith, well, it could be a man or a woman, right? So the clerics in Lion and Dragon are basically gender equal, except maybe at the highest levels of the administrative part of the clerical order, because they have to deal with the rest of the world, and the rest of the world would be uncomfortable with dealing with women in a really high position of power, right? Then I pointed out that, well, yeah, you could have, in theory, a woman who is a fighter, who's in a military company or things like that. There were women thieves, in the lower class. There's a lot of room for gender distinction. You could have people disguising themselves as boys and when they're actually girls and going out adventuring or any of that sort of stuff. There's a lot of ways that you should accommodate it without just saying, no, you can't have an actual medieval setting. You have to have a medieval backdrop, but entirely 2018 values, right? But that is what these people demanded, because when I came out with this book, they attacked me for saying, well, how can you possibly have a medieval setting where male and females aren't absolutely equal, right? Where the genders aren't completely in parity, and you can have anybody be anything without any kind of, cultural restrictions, just like we want to have it now, even though the same people claiming that I was doing this wrong are people claiming that today there isn't that in 2018 society either, right? So whatever. But this is what you're going to see more and more, right? Any setting, any world that does not reflect the values of the Seattle, Portland, San Francisco triangle is going to be slated for attack, right? And what does that mean? Why does it matter if beyond that, is that everywhere, every game that you're going to play in is going to have to be this. It's going to have to be 2018 Seattle, right? And like, why would you play there, right? Waterdeep, back in the time of first edition, was a boiling point city full of unbelievable danger, crimes, sects, cults, all this, all these messes, to the point that the city guard had to go around with masks on, because if they didn't, hide their identities, then people would hunt them down. But nowadays, we don't want that kind of anonymity, because police violence, right? And of course, police have to be accountable, so that if, a gang wants to murder them, they should be murdered, or whatever. Like, this is what these people have done to a fantasy world, right? That a fantasy world cannot be anything other than an immediate and the most shallow and most pathetic commentary imaginable on modern political issues that are going to look ridiculously stupid in a matter of years. That's where we're at. And that's a really, really big problem. Because, this is the death of creativity. It's also the death of myth, right? There's nothing mythical about this. And there's nothing interesting about this. There's no challenge to this. Why would anyone want to play in this Waterdeep, right? In this Waterdeep that, if you want to go to see this Waterdeep, get on a plane, buy a discount ticket, go to Seattle. That's it. It's the same thing, right? There are even people who think they're elves living there, so you're not even going to miss on the fantasy elements, right? I'm sure you'll see some witches while you're at it. So why, how do they think that anyone is going to see this as some great deal, right? And it's not, you talk about diversity. Well, my diversity, the diversity that I think D&D Gate wants to represent is a diversity where everybody is welcome to play, right? Everybody's welcome to play D&D. We don't care about your race, your gender, your sexuality. We don't care about the color of your skin. We only judge you by the content of your character sheet. That's it. And within that leaves it wide open for all kinds of possible ideas, right? What these people are doing here is saying, from now on, every product, everything has to be about teaching this concept of identity politics and about recognizing this shopping list of different identity groups, and when every setting is exactly alike, when every setting looks just like 2018 Seattle, then boom, you've got diversity, jazz hands, right? We've done it. We've created the most diverse D&D that ever was by making every setting exactly the same and every book about the same stupid themes that have no mythical value. That's the end goal here. Why? The destruction of culture. The deconstruction of culture, I should say. This is all the way back to Derrida, right? That any kind of authority is illegitimate, any kind of hierarchy is illegitimate, that this is a criminal sort of enterprise, an imbalance of power, because there are some people that get to be more, mainstreamed and other people that get to be more marginalized, and that this is therefore illegitimate. And it's illegitimate in every case, and there's no solution, so the only thing to do is to destroy every element of civilized culture, to destroy archetype, to destroy myth, and to invade every aspect of culture, to intentionally deconstruct it until there's nothing left of value to it. And then step 2, nobody knows what it is. Step 3, utopia. Right? Step 2 is a mystery. We don't know exactly how tearing down everything of value in culture is going to lead to some kind of utopia, because it sure doesn't look like it. It sure looks like what it's leading to is a civil war, right? Is an increased level of conflict. And it's leading to people who have no problem with, say, LGBT people playing in their games, who would welcome them with open arms, having to stand up against these ridiculous, crass, self-serving statements of propagandism that most LGBT gamers never asked for, and it ends up creating this resentment that shouldn't be there. We shouldn't feel resentment to LGBT people because of the stupid shit that Crawford writes for Wizards of the Coast, right? We should feel resentment against him and all his other SJW buddies that are trying to weaponize LGBT people as ideological, nuclear bomb in a war that they're fighting against Western civilization. Those are the people we should feel resentment to. Those are the people we should be pissed off at, and everybody should be pissed off at, right? Especially if you are an LGBT person who really likes D&D and wants D&D to be about the epic, about the archetypal, about the mythical, about adventure, and not about making it part of a learning session for an indoctrination program into a political ideology that you may or may not subscribe to, right? I would feel the same way if it wasn't radical leftists who were doing this, if it was, say, fundamentalist Christians, if some fundamentalist Christians had taken over Wizards of the Coast and were infusing, Christian, shallow and pathetic Christian messages so that every part of Waterdeep looked like, a version of a Jack Chick novel, though at least that would be funnier than this. This is not even funny. It's just pathetic. It's boring and bland, right? But if it was fundamentalist Christians who were Christianizing every setting, who demanded that every setting be really about teaching people about the love of Jesus Christ and the punishment of evil, sinful people that don't follow Christian dogma, I would be just as disgusted as I am by this. So don't try to pretend that this is something about us being gatekeepers against LGBT people. No, it's about how SJWs suck ass. That's what it's about. So if you like this video, please share it. Make sure that the people know. Alert the public about what's going on. And please subscribe so that you'll see future videos that I hope will be just as entertaining to you and just as informative. And if you really want to help me out, then there's a Patreon page for Inappropriate Characters. That's the chat show I do with Benja Satanis and Grim Jim DeBurrow. The three of us are the three most censored game designers in the RPG hobby. And we're standing up and talking about things that a lot of people would really wish we'd stop talking about because it puts them into trouble. They keep saying we're irrelevant, and they say it hundreds of times a day. And when somebody says you're irrelevant hundreds of times a day, it's probably because they're feeling a little threatened about how relevant you are. And if you don't want to support the Patreon, well, you can go on my blog. On my blog, there's a PayPal option. You can press the PayPal button and send me some money. And if you do, the more that I get supported in this kind of endeavor, the more often I'll do these videos. If you don't have the cash, or you just don't want to spend it right now, but you want to do me a favor, then share the video. Get people to know about it. And if you care at all about D&D and where D&D is going, share the video. Remember also, don't buy products made by people who despise you, right? Buy stuff by designers who don't hate you. That's everything for today. Currently smoking Bladder Diplomat. Oh, there we are. Bladder Diplomat with Country Doctor.